Good morning. This is Just Listen, hosted by George, live podcast. We are actually a little early today, and I'm excited to do it. And so, what I want to do is jump into it. And as you are already aware, we are talking about if I were running for governor of Illinois, also what's going on with the legislature in Springfield. And then I'll talk about new updates to what I was talking about on my regular podcast about U.S. federal government policy. All right, so let's jump into if I were running for governor of Illinois, what I would do. Now, it looks like that there's been a little action on the Republican side, and it looks like that I saw a commercial from one of the candidates. It was probably about 15 seconds. So I'm assuming now that the wheels are rolling. Now, I'm not sure if because of where we're at in Illinois, being in the Southern Illinois Metro East, if we see a lot of the commercials. Not sure about that. It would be nice if we would see every commercial that the rest of the state sees. And I see that as a problem because you had to keep people informed. So getting back to the budget, um, one of the priorities this year for Governor Pritzker is the budget. Um, but what he wants to do, and with the help of the legislature, is totally different. So he was talking about how we were going to have a surplus. Well, I did some checking, and according to the Independent Commission on Government Forecasting, that's not true. And they also went on to say that the need is to control spending, especially on programs for non citizens, rather than relying on future tax increases. Now, this is important. How do you get revenue to take care of your expenditures? Well, it looks like that Governor Pritzker and the legislature are trying to get people who are working to pay more and then also going after millionaires and billionaires. That's a philosophy that I think is a failure if you look over the last decades. When you go after people who are working hard, hardworking Illinoisans want to pay a fair share, but they don't want to pay everybody's share. All right, so there were some inaccurate projections reported that revenues at 740 million below the governor's figures indicate the budget is over 1 billion out of balance. And then I think that the math numbers are being fudged by the governor and the legislature about how much money they think that they're going to have coming in. And when there's another shortfall, they're going to ask Illinois taxpayers to come out of their pockets for more. So the spending problem is that the administration continues to pass billion-dollar policies without accountability. State spending has increased 30 to 40% since Governor Pritzker has taken office. I'll say that again, 30 and 40%. And we're not investing in business. We're not investing in things that can make money for the state. We are investing in people who are here illegally and making sure that their costs are covered because we are sanctuary city. Illinoisans, is this what we want our taxpayer dollars to go towards? Okay, Now, the legislature brought this up. The Republicans, lack of transparency regarding spending cut reports ordered by the governor, stating that they have been shut out of the budget process. So the Republicans in the legislature are complaining because they are being cut out of the budget process, because you can't know what's going to be done with the budget if you're not even at the meeting. We have no idea. Here is the big one, and I've mentioned this several times in different forms. The state has become reliant on temporary federal funding. Now, before the Trump administration took office, we had billions of dollars coming into Illinois the last 2 or 3 years. Now we were also getting money because of COVID, and it wasn't just this state that got hurt by that. When money comes into the state, the governor and the legislature control where it goes, and they can also hold it. And this process has caused Illinoisans to have to pay more in taxes because it's used for other things, like in these sanctuary cities, to pay for things that are not supposed to be paid for, like policies that give money to anybody in the state that's undocumented. We want to treat people fairly in the state. Illinoisans do. Well, what we don't want to do is pay for people in the state that aren't supposed to be here in the first place. And that was a priority by Governor Pritzker, because he has a track record of just only doing that. And Illinoisans in this part of the state, especially, probably don't even know that, because we don't get any news. And the news that we do get once or twice a year is favorable toward the governor, who probably will come to the state 3 or 4 times to get votes. He heavily depends on Cook County for him to get reelected, and that does a disservice to the rest of the state. And also, the governor, Illinois, need to know, and the couple of times he's been on TV, he's talking about the federal government not giving him money. Well, the Trump administration has made it clear that they're not giving money to fund people who are in the state illegally. So that's where we're at with our finances in Illinois. And the Republicans in the legislature are saying that the approach that Governor Pritzker has been using is unsustainable, and that the fiscal stability for Illinoisans, they're going to end up paying more in taxes. Now, I want to mention a program that the governor has, or the governor and the legislature are promoting for this year. They're promoting something called Surplus to Success program, with $300 million to remediate and repurpose idle state properties for local economic use. Now, what are these buildings? Well, I'm going to tell you here in a second. Let me find it. There we are. Sorry about that, because this is important. That's why I wanted to find it. Okay. Now, high priority idle properties as of 2026. There's 5 sites. One of them is the Dwight Correctional Center, which is a formal prison which has been not used for probably 10 years. The other one is Jacksonville Developmental Center. It's a 100-acre site centrally located in Jacksonville that has been considered a community hazard due to its vacancy. You got the Lincoln Developmental Center. You got the Singer Mental Health Center. And then the Shapiro Developmental Center. Now, bottom line on this, do we need these buildings and why are we throwing $300 million at it? I believe that as Illinoisans, if these need to be repurposed, why don't we allow the private sector to do that? So for the correctional center, for example, I'm sure that there's federal money that could be justified if they wanted to use this facility again. Now, without knowing the background, maybe the people who lived in the area wanted that one closed. We don't know why. But before you start funding things, we need to find out if it's still needed, because otherwise we're using taxpayer dollars to fund something because somebody wants it for some kind of reason that should be done with private funding. So that's what I'm trying to get to. And they want to put $300 million on this. And I keep saying the word audit, but it looks like one of the hugest problems for Illinoisans in the state is there are no audits justifying what money's been spent on and also the reason why they want to do it. And as a taxpayer, the governor should ensure that the money for people in Illinois is taken care of. So this issue is very important from that perspective. And like I've said, being governor, you're supposed to be governor for everyone in the state. And it doesn't look like that is the case at all. Okay, so next I want to go to the General Assembly and talk about what they've been doing. So, what have they been up to? Well, they haven't been in session yet. The House of Representatives in Illinois is actually coming back today between 12 and 1 o'clock. Here's what their agenda is in case you didn't know. You only find out here. So they have to deal with the midterm election year, a projected $2.2 billion budget shortfall. And what are their priorities? Well, they want a tax on millionaires to fund property tax relief. Okay, so every time they want to tax people, millionaires, and it always seems like that's the same theme. Some kind of tax on millionaires for property tax relief. And the governor and the legislature have not shown any indication, because if you go to their website, that's not what they're trying to make new laws for. They're trying to make new laws to take care of people in the state. They've passed these laws on immigration favoring undocumented people. So them saying that they want to tax people, millionaires, that's something that I don't believe should be being done. State grocery tax. They repealed it, but remember, this is an election year. So, and it was already in place. Why didn't they do it 2 or 3 years ago when it would have meant something to Illinoisans in the state? So they want to grant the Illinois Department of Insurance more power to regulate and reject homeowners insurance rate hikes following significant increases by major providers. Okay, so that on the surface seems like that is a good one. But did you know that they are lobbied by insurance companies, for example, to do flood insurance? And I know from personal experience that where I live at, it's not a flood zone. However, I have to call up the insurance company and then fax, and I said fax, them a document saying that I want to decline it. Otherwise, it keeps going up. Now, that is a result of a law in that the legislature passed in Illinois. So they're not really helping us with that. Okay, energy and data centers. This one is pretty important. For infrastructure in the state, they are looking at supply challenges caused by rapid growth of power hungry data centers to, to possibly get rid of those. But what you don't see is if they get rid of those data centers, traffic, data traffic is going to be slowed. And no one has explained why it is important to have more data centers as and it's not just with AI, it's with raw traffic coming through any infrastructured network to homes, to businesses, etc. And yes, energy, it does need a lot of energy. Now they are trying to pass a law that they're only going to use solar, etc. And also, we're not going to use any nuclear. And as the population grows in Illinois, that means that you're going to reach a time, if they get their way, where you can only be on the internet at certain times because it's just going to be too many people on it. And it's going to cost someone a lot of money for electricity. And the legislature has shown that they are willing to pass that on to Illinoisans in the state. And they did that when they partnered last year with the energy company to raise the rates. Sorry. So the rates are getting ready to go up for electricity in Illinois coming into March, April, and May. So the legislature, the people in the legislature, they work for us, but it feels like that they're not doing that. Right? So Republicans are pushing for the restoration of utility rate caps and expansion of reliable energy sources like nuclear and natural gas. That is a very important issue because, as I've said, the cost will eventually come down to people paying that income tax and some of the other taxes that are being put on us, and it starts with the legislature. So that is something to think about, and I will bring you more information. I won't be bringing any information Friday because I will be out of town, but next week, I want to see what the legislature is actually going to do. All right. So let's get to the latest from my podcast on the U.S. federal government uh, policy on the state's voting laws. Okay, so new information, a lot has happened. And I talked about some of it, but I will talk about some other stuff. So far, the Trump administration's and the DOJ lawsuits, all of them have been dropped. And the courts are saying that the federal government cannot look at the voter rolls and they can't question some of the policies. Like I told you, I was surprised that undocumented people can vote in local elections. So I think maybe something like that needs to be looked at. Okay. So, other things that they're doing is they are trying to use executive orders to shape how voting is done through proof of citizenship. There is a March 2025 executive order aimed to require documentary proof of citizenship for the National Mail Voter Registration Form. Okay, so this is in litigation right now. Uh, the White House has directed the Election Assistance Commission to explore withholding federal funds from states that do not comply with certain federal registration standards. So far, that is the only way to get some of the states' attention. Now, it's not nationwide. It's an issue probably in 3 or 4 states, like I have previously told you, Illinois being one of those. And that goes back to how many electoral votes that each state gets. And Illinois is tied for fifth for the most electoral votes in the country of the 50 states. So they're trying to get some rule changes to rescind certain previous guidance as part of a broader effort. Now, voting is very important. That's why I did the podcast about it. And currently, I'm just laying out the facts here that of what's going on. Now, here is what the other side is doing. So there's something called the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, reintroduced in March 2025 and again in the Senate in 2025. This bill seeks to restore the pre-clearance requirement, forcing states with a history of discrimination to get federal approval before changing voting laws. Now, why are they doing that? And they use the word discrimination. You have to decide this because what they are saying is if there's a history of discrimination that they think is correct, that the federal government would be Congress would have to change the voting law. So the Trump administration couldn't issue new guidance if this were the case. So that's what the other side is trying to get through Congress now. All right. The SAVE Act and Let America Vote Act. These bills supported by the current administration aim to prohibit non-citizens from voting in any taxpayer-funded election and will require proof of citizenship for registration. Okay. So the Republicans put this forward. And what this does is you had to verify your citizenship. And as I told you, in Arizona, that is the only state where uh, undocumented immigrants are coming into, that there is a check to enforce the law that's already in place. So Congress, probably the Republican side, is looking at this because they want to make sure that the people voting, and like I told you, there's a balance here. There is no evidence that there's been any widespread cheating as far as the election rules have gone thus far. They're just doing an audit to make sure that that's still true. Like I said, Friday, I won't be doing the podcast, so I probably went a little longer. Uh, there was a lot of information that I just shared with you. Always, always, always get various sources of information. And in this part of the state, um, Illinoisans need information to make decisions on local elections, state elections, and the federal elections. And that's the product that I'm trying to bring to you right now. So, have a great day and stay warm. And again, this is Just Listen, hosted by George, live.